You are now listening to the Going North podcast with your host, author and speaker, Dom Bregman. And every Monday and Thursday, you're going to hear the voice of a different author share their stories, expertise, and their struggles that they had to overcome in life to leave you inspired to get more out of your life. Be sure to not only listen to this episode, but share with others, connect with the authors, and always advance others to advance yourself. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, we're bringing some extraordinary humans from across the globe who put pen to paper and publish their work. Today is no different because we have an author in his house. This is a first for the podcast indeed, because we have a former Division I basketball player from Marquette University. A Division I basketball player, y'all. My man's probably dunked on so many folks, my friends. Good thing this is virtual. I would have got dunked on already, baby. Because this wonderful author right here also earned his MBA from Loyola University, Chicago, and is also the co-founder of Playmakers Basketball. And he implemented collegiate level workouts to a basketball camp circuit, as well as an AAU program aimed to provide better opportunities to kids in the Midwest. And in addition to that, prior to this wonderful author's current role as an e-commerce executive, he also worked with high school and collegiate athletic programs on the importance of proper nutrition and the development of fueling stations to enhance athletic performance. And this guy is passionate about basketball because he also published the best-selling book known as Walk On Warrior, Drive, Discipline, and the Will to Win. And you probably know what I'm talking about now. It's the one, the only JW himself, John Willkom. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Dom. Appreciate the intro and looking forward to talking with you this morning.
Oh, yeah, man. Yes, indeed. You have a great book here, my friend. It's definitely a great one. Got through and read through the first couple of chapters and highlighted some stuff. And I was like, man, my dude went through a lot in his young age and turned it into business.
Yeah, no, it was crazy because I started writing that book 14 years ago, actually while I was in college. And I thought at the time that I'd pen some notes here and there and almost keep somewhat of a diary in the hopes that maybe one day I'd share some of the stories with my kids or, pass them on to people that had an interest in what it was like to play college basketball. And then it kept kind of burning at me that there were probably a lot of people out there that had similar aspirations as to what I did when I was a kid. And if I could kind of go under the hood a bit into what it was like on a day-to-day basis to play basketball at that level, um, and what it actually took to get there, that I could probably provide quite a bit of value to kids and also just parents out there that wanted a more in-depth look into what it was like. So last few years, I really buckled down to turn it into a real book and publish it to the masses. And now here we are. And I think the best part about sharing a story, and especially a story that's intimate into yourself, is just the reactions you get from so many people that you've never met. And I think that's been just a real joy for me to get people reaching out to me really from all over the world, saying that the story inspired them in some way or um, caused them to rethink how they pursue their days or train to be a basketball player or an athlete or whatever they choose to do in life. So it's been a lot of fun for me.
Heck yeah, man. Fun on the bun indeed. My man's been getting some great feedback. Over 59 ratings on Amazon, too.
Yeah, it's crazy because those are sometimes hard to get. It's funny how a lot of people, when they don't like something, they'll be the first to leave you a review or give you some feedback. But oftentimes when people like something, they just as well kind of move on with their lives. So I definitely appreciate the folks that have left some feedback. And obviously, as an author, you love to hear people's thoughts on kind of where the book took them and what it caused them to think about or potentially contemplate in their own life.
There you go. There you go, indeed. What's probably been the most helpful thing so far in this journey since publishing the book?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, well, this is my first book, and so in so many ways, I had to learn so many things just about turning something into a real book. And I think a lot of us go through that where you may have a manuscript or you have a good story to tell, and you want to get it out to people, but all of a sudden you wake up one day and you think, how do I do this? And um, are there people out there that can help me with this process? And um, how can I learn some of these things myself? And so I think it's just a combination of networking with other people and teaching yourself certain things. And in a lot of ways, you really almost go through a journey yourself as an author to get something, I guess, out to the public. And I think a lot of people take that for granted, but that was a fun process for me. It certainly stretched, I think, my skill set and my abilities up to that point. And I think when you get done with a project like that, you really take a lot of pride in what you produced and what you were able to create, kind of out of nothing. And since then, like I said, the feedback's been great. And also, I'm a big believer in just when you take an action, it typically leads to other actions. And a lot of times you don't necessarily know what those are going to be when you start. But, for me, writing the book was a way for me to continue to just stay connected to basketball in some way and share with other people that had an enthusiasm for sports. And through that journey, it's kind of opened some other doors, whether that be coaching or people asking for advice on different drills and training and how they should handle recruiting, or even just penning some articles for some different blogs. Those have all been awesome things that weren't necessarily on my radar before I wrote the book, but um, those have been doors that have essentially been opened as a result of putting it out there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Opening all the doors, baby. That's right. All the doors, baby. All the pages of doors. Oh, man, oh, man. But yeah, man, you're definitely right. And that's like the greatest thing about this day and age is that it's a lot easier to publish a book and the fact that it helps you to basically help others in a way and you get to really relive some of your stories. And heck, even one of my favorite parts of the book in the beginning is when you mentioned how you're actually this young kid and then you're able to get around some of the older kids because one of the older kids was like he's like actually was kind of like a big brother to you and actually lets you hang around him and help you out to get better.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of almost wounds in the book, and I think that's something as an author that you often you think long and hard about whether those are things you want to share, essentially with the world. I had a mentor as a young kid that was very close to me. Um, you know, taught me tons of things about basketball, but also just kind of took me under his wing. Um, and when I was in fourth grade, he passed away, um, and he was a junior in high school at the time. And so you learn to kind of deal with those things the best that you can at the time. Um, of course, you look back on some of those moments and you think like, what was I thinking when I was 11 years old? And in so many ways, you're not really able to comprehend the magnitude of death or just what that means, but you do the best just to kind of move on. And as you get older, you look back and appreciate just the time someone like that took to share what he knew about basketball, but also just to kind of just set you straight and keep you going down the right path. And so I've always kind of tried to do that for other people and just made a conscious effort to be that person as a college athlete or as a coach after that, because I think so many young people are just looking for a mentor in some way. They're looking for a guide. They're looking for someone that they can almost say, I can see myself in you in some way. Um, and I think a lot of adults honestly are looking to pass on what they know as well. And so I think as a coach, as a father, you never know what it's like in some of those situations until you're actually one of those things. And once you have that opportunity, I think we all kind of owe it to other people to pass on those experiences and that wisdom.
Oh yeah, that's right. The good passing right there. That's right. The good passing. Don't just pass balls, but pass wisdom.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes so many folks think that whatever it is they have to give may not be good enough. And I'm certainly a example of that in some cases where we say, you know, one day I'm going to be this. And then once I get to that point, I will go back and share it with people, or I will go do this once I'm, able to learn X, Y, Z. But the reality is sometimes you have to take what you have and you need to focus on the strengths that you have and put those out, into your community. And I think that's oftentimes just a difference in mentality of not necessarily focusing on the things that you can't do, but taking a good look at, here's some things that I have to offer, and I take pride in those things, and I'm going to be excited about going and sharing them with people that could possibly benefit from them.
Heck yeah, man. Because it's like, why wait to share your wisdom that you have now? Because it's like you probably could have waited like 20 more years into the future to write this book and maybe even expanded it even more. But it's like, why wait? Like, just take the action right now to make it happen. And it's like you got some great lessons in this book that folks can learn from, especially those who are young and going through stuff. Because it's like, hey, you lost a very powerful friend and mentor at a young age, like a child out there. They've gone through the same thing too, and it's like, wait, this happened to him, and he was a college Division I basketball player, and this happened to him. It's like yeah, it just helps you to realize like, hey, that you don't have to wait to share your gift.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many of those things sometimes are reinforced through different examples in your life where you may be on that track for maybe a couple weeks or a couple months, or maybe you even got it going for a year, but then all of a sudden you kind of start to doubt what it is that you're doing, and it's easy to get knocked off that path. And I think for me, I was working for a sports agent one summer during college, and my job was to help different athletes get sponsorship deals and speaking engagements and TV commercials. And at the time, I really had no idea what I was doing, but I thought this is really cool, and I got to meet a bunch of NFL football players, and I thought this is probably the coolest job that I could ever get. And one day we had a client. His name was Donald Driver, and he was a pretty famous wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. And he was in the office, and he was telling me about when he was in college, how he went to a small college called Elkhorn State, and he was a good football player, not a great one, but a good football player. But he was an elite high jumper in track and field, so good that he probably could qualify for the Olympics if he wanted to do that. And he was telling me that um, even though he could go to the Olympics, his dream was to play NFL football. And even though he had a very slim chance to make the Green Bay Packers roster, he's like, I knew the whole time I was going to make it. And I thought to myself, wow, I mean, here's a guy that is talented in so many ways. He probably was going to be a success in whatever he chose to do. But he had a vision for his life, and certainly a belief that he wasn't going to be deterred no matter what. And sure enough, he ended up making the team. His first couple years, he hardly played, but he just kept working hard. Um, and then he turned that into a 13-year NFL career, and he was a Pro Bowl receiver a couple years, and really had a remarkable NFL career. And I always think back to talking to him because I thought if there was anybody that believed in himself, um, it was definitely him.
Amen to that. Indeed, that's what I'm talking about. Yes, indeed, that belief in yourself. That's right. That buy. That's right. The BIY. That's right. Believe in yourself. Oh man.
Oh man.
That's right. Forget about bye weeks. It's about believing in yourself. That's right.
For sure. And I think just to add on to that, I got done with college, and I think for a lot of athletes, and if there's anybody listening to this that has been in a similar situation, you spend your whole life sometimes playing a sport, and sometimes you never look up to think, what am I going to do when I'm done playing? Um, and I was able to get a part-time job working for the Milwaukee Bucks, and um, it was just an awesome kind of transition for me to take my passion for basketball and still be able to be close to the game in some way. Not as a player, I did a bunch of administrative things, setting up TV monitors and making sure uh, broadcasters had their stat sheets, and just helping with kind of how a basketball game is produced on TV and radio. But I think, situations like that, I just encourage people to think about how you can take whatever you're passionate for. And, if you can turn that into something you can do on a daily basis, whether that's your full time job or it's something you volunteer with, maybe something you explore, once or twice a month, I think that really kind of feeds all our souls in some way. And when you don't do those things, oftentimes your inner voice kind of talks to you sometimes and just says, why isn't this a part of my life anymore? And I think we all kind of owe it to ourselves to take a good look in the mirror and say, what do I really love? What am I passionate about? And how do I stay connected to that in some way?
Very true, right there, and it's great that you're able to actually do that because it's definitely right. It's like if a single sport or just sports has been like your whole life, and it's like, all right, well, if I'm not gonna make it to the NFL, NBA, or NHL or something, I gotta do something else in my life here.
For sure. For sure.
And the beautiful thing about it is, you got to the point where you're actually able to take all of your love for sports and actually make it to continue to be a part of your life. You're actually helping future athletes.
Yeah. So even going back to high school, my friend and I um, wanted to start our own basketball camp. And at the time, we thought, maybe we could get a handful of kids to come. And at the end of the day, it was 100% about just taking what we knew about the game and sharing it with others. And that first summer, we had close to 100 kids come, and we took great pride in just working with those kids. And we charged them a couple bucks just to like buy T-shirts, and it was one of the greatest weeks I think of both of our lives. And we ended up kind of turning that into a camp circuit, that a few years later we would end up hosting 13 camps across the Midwest, where each week we'd go to a different city, and we'd invite a lot of our college athlete friends to come help with the camps. And we thought, if we could get younger people that just had an enthusiasm for the game to share that back with the youth, that we would be doing an awesome thing. And so that's kind of how Playmakers Basketball was born. And then eventually we started having a few AAU teams where we'd round up some of the kids that wanted to play basketball in the spring and summer, and give them opportunities to play on teams. And Playmakers Basketball still exists, 12, 13 years later. And they've got teams from about fifth grade all the way through 12th grade for both boys and girls. And it's great to see stuff like that continue, because at the end of the day, um, if kids want to do something and they don't have an opportunity, we thought it was a really cool thing to kind of meet that need, and give them something to look forward to that they were excited to be a part of.
Heck yeah, man, because the kids who love basketball, they love some basketball, baby. That's right. They love the basketball. And it's great, too. 13 years and counting. That's congrats, man.
Thanks. Yeah, it's stuff like that where again, I just think going back to the action leads to action. Sometimes you just never know what's going to become of some of these things, and you also never know who's going to want to support these things with you. And sometimes you start out real small and it's just maybe yourself or you and a friend, and then you get more support from other people that want to help set things up, or they want to help organize tournaments, or they want to help with jerseys or what have you. And you can really kind of build a flywheel of sorts that continues to run without you having to do everything. And so I think it's been really great to see people kind of embrace those types of things. And I think it's a lot easier too when it's focused on their kids, because everyone wants what's best for their kids, and wants to provide opportunities that way.
Heck yeah, man. So any future plans to take it to the next level? Because you're coming up on the 15-year anniversary of it at this point.
Yeah. So that whole thing, we have different people running that. I think some of those things are just meant to kind of exist, and they're providing a great service to all the people that are a part of it. Um, and I think in many ways it's like um, my work in some ways with Playmakers, was done a long time ago. Just you kind of build that foundation and you get it to a point where you pass it on to other people, and then they kind of take it from there, and they're able to put their own spin on it and a fresh kind of outlook on what it is. And I think that's hard. That's hard too sometimes when you start something, because you always want to hang on to it dear life and say, this is mine and I started it and should be run this way. But a lot of times it's very satisfying to pass things on as well, to say, I established this, we kind of built it up from nothing, and now we've got other talented people that are running it and kind of taking the vision in the direction that they think is best for the kids in the program.
Amen to that, because it's great to have something to say it's yours, but it's like after a while, it's like you gotta let go of it and let other folks become leaders in their own right and actually run with it.
For sure. And I think the other thing too is sometimes, I'm not that old. I'm 35 years old, and I'm reminded of that when I look back and I see kids that were on some of our first playmaker teams in fifth and sixth grade. And one kid is actually starting training camp right now for the Toronto Raptors. Um,
Nice.
and you think back and you're like, wow. I mean, here was a kid that was an okay player, in a small town in Wisconsin, and now is amongst the 500 or so players that play in the NBA, which is pretty remarkable when you think about it. Um, and so it's he's one example, obviously, from a basketball success standpoint, but you also look around and you see all the amazing things that these kids are doing with their lives. Kids going to college, kids working in nonprofits or in different business enterprises, kids coaching and teaching. And I love staying connected to stuff like that, because um, in a negative way, it reminds me of how old I am. Um,
I got
but
you.
in a positive way, it's like, wow, I'm glad that we were a part of your life in some way, and that you're doing well for yourself.
Oh yeah, amen to that indeed. It does get kind of rough after a while though. It's like, oh shoot. It's like, yeah, that's right. The young captain, baby. That's right. That's me. And then you see the kids grow up and it's like, oh shoot, what the fudge? All right, I'm getting old.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Ah, man. But it's always good indeed. Definitely a playmaker indeed. Made all sorts of plays. That's right. Made all sorts of plays. Well, and speaking of plays and not Romeo and Juliet, if you were to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but this time in the current year of 2019 with all of your amassed knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
I think the number one thing would just be to trust in your abilities and not be afraid to fail. Um, one thing that our coach at Marquette would always tell us was that fear either motivates you or it paralyzes you. And I can give you an example of how it used to work on the basketball court. We used to do different drills, and the losers would always have to run a set of sprints at the end before we go on to the next drill. And naturally, after you've done this a few times, if you're about to lose a drill or you're way behind, the human nature is to say, well, why don't I kind of shut it down here a little bit early so I can get some air back in my lungs, because I know in about 30 seconds I'm gonna have to run these sprints, and if I don't do it in a certain amount of time, I'm gonna have to run them again. And so what would happen oftentimes is that um, you would start off and you would do it like that, but as you got older, you started to say, um, you know, fear isn't going to paralyze me or cause me to stop in whatever I'm going to do. And I think that um, as I matured and even just got older through college, um, you kind of develop the mentality of, I'm just going to attack everything in the moment, and I'm not going to worry about what comes next. I'm not going to worry if I'm losing in this drill and then I might have to run next. Um, I'm just going to, attack this until the whistle blows, and then if I have to run, I run. But I think you develop kind of a mental toughness that you don't have when when you show up in college. And I think a lot of people um, don't think about that side of things. Of so many of us go to college, and especially younger athletes now, that kids are more developed physically. They're ready to compete against grown men in a lot of cases at a young age. But mentally, man, until you've been down, kind of some of those paths of, am I going to make it? I can't breathe. Am I going to be able to do this? You It's very easy to kind of cave in. And so I think as a coach, you do that with players, obviously, to get them to a point that um, if you are in a close game, or there's 20,000 people screaming, and mentally you're able to just kind of calm yourself down and say, I'm in the moment and I'm focused on the next play. um, and I think that just kind of applies to the rest of your life in a lot of ways, where when the going gets tough, you're able to kind of calm yourself down and steady yourself so that you're able to execute whatever it is you're trying to do.
That's right, baby. Zen warrior swag, baby. That's right. Walk on, Zen warrior. That's right. That's right. Dunk on the fools with complete mindfulness.
You're killing it with the jokes this morning.
Oh yeah, I just imagine that being like a random. Heck, it might even be on YouTube somewhere. I probably haven't found it yet. Some random dude doing Buddha style commentary whilst folks are just dunking on folks in basketball. That's right, the art of dunking on fools. That's right, you must jump 10 feet into the air with ultimate air.
That's great.
Woo, but it's all good, though. It's all good, though. Solid advice from the mighty W who loves to win. So, for those who want to join you in the winning, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at John Willkom. I encourage folks to check out my book on Amazon. As Dom mentioned, it's called Walk On Warrior, and it's actually celebrating 1 year this week that the book was published on Amazon.
Woohoo!
Yeah, it's been an amazing year. Time flies, and um, it's been a great journey. And I just encourage, if you're an athlete out there and you want to know what it's like um, to really play Division I basketball, but also kind of get into the mind of how I felt when I was doing those things. I think the key for me in writing the book wasn't necessarily to recap a bunch of events, or throw down a bunch of statistics or tell you the scores of all the games. It definitely wasn't that. It was more to just take you into a year of playing at Marquette, and kind of the thoughts and feelings that you have. And I think because a lot of the book was written when I was 18, 19 years old, and then the rest of it was finished when I was quite a bit older, I think you see kind of a change in mentality, even just in how the story is told. So for for athletes, for parents that have kids that aspire to play college sports. I think they'd really enjoy it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You'll definitely enjoy it with an IN because it's a nice, good read. Haven't finished it myself yet, but I've been enjoying it thus far because it's something the kids need. Heck, even grown-ups too. They can appreciate it just because it reminds you of great fundamental lessons. So happy 1 year anniversary to you, John, on your awesome book, my friend.
Thanks, Dom. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. All the best to you. You got a great podcast. I love the concept and was a pleasure.
Hey there, you superstar. Thanks a bunch for making it this far in the podcast. Hope you really enjoyed it. Heck, if you made it this far, that means you really enjoyed it. Be sure to shoot the guest an email or head over to the social media pages and leave them a nice response that you heard them on the Going North podcast so that way they can continue to be inspired to do great things. And be sure to share this podcast with others that you think would enjoy it as well, because we want to inspire as many people as possible to live their dreams, embrace them, and to do something positive.